Slightly later than the day, slightly later in the day. We're already off to Rock and Star, ladies and gentlemen. Slightly later in the day than what we usually do for air travel reasons. But as I have said constantly on this show, there is absolutely no force of nature, barring college basketball, excuse me, that will stop us from recording this on a Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. I would like to think the most the quickest rising football podcast there has been over the last couple of months. I have no statistics to back that up. It's just a gut feeling. My source, hashtag trust me, bro. But in all seriousness, it's the Sports Agents Chaos podcast, guys. As you can tell from the start, we love to be a little bit of chaotic on this show to go in with the fun and the football. And it's the perfect trio, technically quartet of guys and animal to bring that to you on a weekly basis. Always joining me, one of my cohorts shaking his head because he hates the fact that he has to share, especially the same layer of the street this week. Sandoval's biggest rival, Justin Zuckman, Zucktails, any nickname that I could come up with. Zucker. Justin, how we doing?
All right, I guess. I'm used to being a level up, I guess, maybe, but I don't know.
Well, you're also more used to not being on the same layer of Sandoval. So
whatever it is, that's what I meant. Yeah.
That leads to it. Of course, as always, you see with a beautiful VCU shirt, by the way, that was very, very reasonably priced. PodFather Rick, play the game really quickly in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. Where is Rick at this week? And starting now, no one's probably going to comment. Rick, where are you this week?
I am in the Hyatt Place Hotel in Norfolk, Virginia, outside of the Greenbrier. Had to fly down here today for a golf outing this coming week. So nice flight, by the way. It was only an hour from New York to Norfolk. It was actually really smooth, although it was very strange. And I'll tease this. That's one of my rants for later on in this podcast, that I have something for the fans regarding my flight. So it was good otherwise. And I'm happy to be here in my ancestral homeland with you, the Washington faithful, because you did it. They did it. They won Thursday. Let's go.
Did they really win?
Well, somebody had to win.
Yeah.
They did have more points on their side of the scoreboard than Chicago did. And unless you're in cross country or golf, that means you won.
True.
I'm just putting this together. You flew that deer out with you?
Oh yeah, he was. No, actually, the deer had the seat next to me. Yeah, and stole my pretzels. So,
bought a ticket just for Sandoval.
Yeah.
The gimmick and the legend grows one step at a time, ladies and gentlemen.
He's flying the plane back from Norfolk on Tuesday, so that'll be a lot of fun.
That'll be a time. We need a Sandoval vlog. Speaking of which, of course, is he Joe Dirt? Is he Miss Piggy? Or is he something else, ladies and gentlemen? We have Sandoval dressed up per what has become this month's gimmick with Sandoval, that he's going to be in costume every single time we record this month. I gotta say, I think I'm favoring last one's a little bit more, mainly because, well, the top hat was just stunting.
I mean, the top hat is classic, but you have to change it up every now and again. And what's a deer with a mullet? A mullet is deer, so it works.
Very true, very true. Now, before we continue, we need to ask this question right now, and I'm surprised this actually wasn't Justin's first question regarding this. Did you buy that wig just for Sandoval, or was that in your closet from like a previous costume?
I mean, let's be real here. Come on. As one of my YouTube influencers, Brian Zane, says, do it for the content. So we're doing it for the content. We bought the top hat for the content. The eye patch actually I bought for myself because I had a sty, so I needed the eye patch, but it worked out as like a secondary thing. The mullet is for the content, and next week's costume is for the content as well. So got to keep things going.
I've said this before. I'll say it again. There is no one more committed to this podcast than Rick. I'm convinced. There's no one more committed to the gimmick than Rick. I absolutely love it. I love it. It's just, oh God, it's amazing. Speaking of amazing, we have, as per usual, an amazing lineup this week back, guys. As you know, we kind of have a set formula, which we're going to not deviate from, but we're going to change up a little bit when it comes to reviewing the NFL week. Because, of course, we always review the week that was in the NFL before slightly looking forward to the week that will be. We have that perfect gap in the middle with Thursday Night Football. Well, I don't know about perfect, but we have the gap in the middle of Thursday Night Football that we go over. And then we go into our little preview, which is the pick challenge, essentially, which is our way of sort of picking games, sort of giving analysis, but for the most part, And then, as always, we end off with the rants that are the best in the biz from Rick. But before we get to all of that, as per usual, we start with the perfect thing. Our king of games, the king of kings, the king of games, whatever you want to call him, Justin Zucker. Justin, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I have been watching a lot of football lately, and I am just so in love with the Thursday night schedules that I really got me to thinking. And I was very curious to find out, do you guys know what team gained the least amount of yards in a single game? All-purpose yards?
In a Thursday night football game or just a game in general?
In general. I mean,
How far back are you going?
Super Bowl era?
Okay. So, because obviously
Far.
obviously the answer is the 1920 Decatur Staleys, who didn't even step on the field in their first game ever. So obviously it's that. Yeah, no. So Super Bowl era. Okay, that makes sense. So we're talking like late 60s into the early 70s.
Wait, my bad. Just so I don't misunderstand the question, is it what one team did in a game, or like the combined teams were
Most all-purpose yards by a single team in a game.
Least, I thought you said.
I'm sorry. Yes, least amount of all-purpose yards. Opposite of most.
So it's got to be. So obviously, it's a team that was low scoring.
Yes.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily. My bad, Justin. It doesn't necessarily need to be a shutout, Rick. I think that's going to be the key here. You don't need to be shut out. Like, you could technically have had a field goal by luck, and still be terrible.
Sure, but technically speaking, I think you would be looking at a shutout potentially, because I mean, you luck into a field goal, sure, but you can also be in field goal range, be knocked out of field goal range because you have a lot of sacks your way. This is kind of like, one of those games, one of those questions that makes me think about teams that were really bad back in the day, and I'm, immediately I think of the Cleveland Browns. I mean, immediately I think about the Cleveland Browns because they had some really bad offensive outputs and some really bad years as well. So, I mean, the thing is that if we're talking Super Bowl era, there's so many years in that. Like if we're trying to figure out the year as well, like that's a nightmare. But if we're talking about just the team, it's pretty. There's 32 teams now. There's 2 guesses each. So.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, you obviously don't pick the game. It's if you can give me the team in the year, I'll be impressed.
Well, Sandoval knows the game off the top of his head anyway, so that for a fact.
Sure
he was there. He was there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Cleveland Browns as my first guess. Year-wise, though, I'm trying to think of a year potentially. Early 2000s Browns were bad. I'm gonna go 04. I think they were not very, very good team in 04. So I'm gonna go with the 04 Cleveland Browns.
I agree. They were not a very good team in 2004, but no, they are not the lowest all-purpose yardage in a game.
Okay.
I gotta get trivia music.
Oh yes.
Well, non-copyright, of course.
Yeah, no, can't copyright it.
So in my mind, while the Browns are, of course, a good shout, and you could maybe even consider one of the games from the winless Lions as well. I feel like I've mentioned this in the past, but very early on in their tenure, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the epitome of terrible in the NFL.
Yes.
They were bad. Now, the question is, what early season Tampa Bay Buccaneer season am I thinking of? Because at one point, they lost 26 games in a row. And that was in the early 70s, from my knowledge, if I'm not mistaken. So it's got to be one of those Tampa Bay teams that was just terrible. I mean, you lose 26 games in a row. You're not good. Especially in football. You're not good.
Nope.
Because even for, nowadays, that would obviously mean you had to have gone at least one season winless. Back then, that's almost 2 full seasons with how the standard went. So it's just me trying to pick the brain of knowing how terrible they were, but trying to remember which season of god-awful the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were. And that's the only thing I struggle with. I'm going to take a shot in the dark because I legitimately don't remember. I'm going to say the 1973 Buccaneers.
Ooh, that is a good guess, Jerk. But no, that is not correct.
So I just had a thought. I feel like the reason why Justin's asking this question is related to a team that played on Thursday Night Football recently. You know, like so I'm trying to think about like what teams played recently that were, so the Bears and the Commanders,
The Broncos and the Colts.
right? And I mean, here's the thing. Recently, the Commanders and the Bears have been bad, and the Colts haven't been great. But if you go backwards to around the time you're talking about, like the Buccaneers, those three teams were actually pretty good. But the Broncos weren't. The Broncos were not a good team back in like the late 60s, early 70s, I'm thinking. So I wonder if there's a tie in here. I'm gonna stab it. I'm gonna take a guess and say the 1967 Denver Broncos.
Ooh. No. Close. I like where your head's at, though, Rick.
Yeah. I'm thinking there's some sort of tie-in, but I'm not quite sure where.
Well, if we're thinking terrible teams, the Colts there are a number of different Colts eras I think we could go for. What sticks out to you as a really bad era of Colts football, Rick?
A really bad era of Colts football?
Because the only one I can legitimately think of for them is when Peyton had the neck surgery and they went 2-14. But they won 2 games, and I feel like that's too recent.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like anything recent, it can't be that, because we have to consider the game has changed so much. And Colts football. Maybe early 80s. Because I know like obviously the 70s were, the 60s and 70s were the Colts, but until Jim Harbaugh came into play, the Colts were a non-factor, really. So maybe early 80s, maybe late 70s, one of those years potentially.
Perhaps. I mean, they were bad to the point where John Elway literally said, "I'm not playing for them."
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, that'll do it.
So when it's that bad,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say early 80s, late 70s. I will take a stab at the 1982 Indianapolis Colts.
Interesting. You guys are actually fairly close to the year, but you do not have the team. This is a tough question.
No, really.
Yeah.
We didn't know. So I've taken 2 guesses. Rick's taken 2 guesses. So does that mean Sandoval's our last up here, Rick? Because it's
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
All right, Sandoval.
Did he Google it yet? He had plenty of time.
Use your magic. I mean, he does have a new iPad. It's this brand spanking new iPad.
He does, and he's using that slim can cooler like the shoe and Get Smart, where it's the shoe phone basically. Okay, that's interesting. He says it didn't have to be from a bad team; it just had to be a bad game.
I mean, that's fair.
It's very fair. My God, how the hell does he know this?
I
think Justin's been asking that question for a while.
So let me
know how he knows it. It's Google.
Let me give a backstory to this. So I married into a family where one of the uncles can tell you day, date, weather, game, starting lineup for any Yankees or Mets game that he went to, or Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants game, even games that were like in the 60s. So somehow, some way, he's channeling the inner spirit of that man and telling me that it was November 4th, 1979, that it was a game called by the late, great Vin Scully that took place in the Kingdome. And not only did this team have the lowest all-purpose yards ever, they only got 1 first down. But this team somehow went to be 9-7 on the year. It was the 1979 Seattle Seahawks versus the Los Angeles Rams.
They were 9-7 that year?
They were 9-7 that year, yeah. Apparently.
Well, it's not
Wow.
what I have. I have them going worse. I have them being, well, at this point, I guess they were 4-6. But yeah, after looking it up very quickly, Sandoval is correct. The 1979 Seattle Seahawks had a -7 all-purpose yards, a team that would have brought a lot of joy to the people watching Thursday Night Football today.
Oof.
It just seems like it would have been a more exciting game.
I mean, it was the Rams though in 1979, so I don't know. I don't think they were that good either. I mean,
According to this, they were 5-5 at the time.
oh, well, okay. So what's funny is that the Rams finished with the same record as the Seahawks, and yet the Rams won their division, and Seattle missed the playoffs at 9-7.
Interesting.
The more you know, and apparently Sandoval knows all. He's back. His winning ways have officially returned, ladies and gentlemen.
It's definitely the hair.
It's the flow.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with the invention of the internet.
No. Listen, you're lucky you have good Wi-Fi for me this week. All right, so you know.
That's very true.
Well, the Wi-Fi went out. All of a sudden, Sandoval couldn't get a question right.
Yeah, right. I said to Jurg off air before we started, I'm just going to rent out a hotel room every Saturday from now on and get better Wi-Fi. You know, it might cost me money at the end, but do it for the content. Why not?
God, this show deserves many things, and one of them would be a sponsor, so we could pay for Rick's Wi-Fi. But as we await that, we're not going to wait for the next game. Justin, another rousing round of trivia. It was absolutely outstanding. But we have more. Of course, we have our fun games. Let's continue with some NFL Would You Rather.
All right, guys. Well, I'm sitting down here today, and I was looking at some stats. And if you had a game on the line and you needed to win, who would you rather have at your quarterback position today? Joe Burrow or Geno Smith?
Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?
Well, look, their stats are actually strikingly similar.
I know.
Joe Burrow has got 1,316 yards. Geno's got 1,305. Geno obviously has the better accuracy, completion percentage, but they both have 9 touchdowns. Joe Burrow does have 5 interceptions to Geno's 2. But Joe Burrow's got the edge in completions, total completions. So who are you taking to finish out your game?
You know, I really hate the world that I'm about to go into right now.
Can we just point out real quick? I feel like part of the reason Justin's saying this, and I don't know if he maybe heard it, but on the commentary of Saints and Seahawks, when the Saints took the lead late in the fourth quarter, they were like, they left too much time for Geno Smith. Did you ever think?
I didn't hear that, but that's fantastic.
Did you ever think in a million years, especially after he was drafted, after the way the Jets' tenure went, did you guys ever think you would live in a world where an NFL commentator said in a game they left too much time on the clock for Geno Smith?
At one point, I would have liked to believe I would have, but
yeah,
I didn't think it was going to happen.
I mean, I hate to say it, I really truly do, but I'll go with Geno Smith over Joe Burrow at this point. I mean, look,
I've done it.
The guy has made less mistakes. I mean, yeah, sure, Burrow had that one bad game so far this year where, you know, he threw 4 picks against the Steelers, but that to me signifies that he's a guy that, you know, has that potential to, you know, give up the big play every now and again, or, you know, kind of force those throws. Whereas for everything that Geno Smith has been in this league, and he's been a lot of things in this league, let me tell you the truth. The fact of the matter is that he's not making mistakes. He's a veteran. He's an older quarterback who is understanding the weapons around him, and he's got DK Metcalf to throw the ball to, and, you know, a decent backfield. Well, until Penny got hurt, a decent backfield. Look, the track record this season has shown that Geno Smith's just been better at those situations. I mean, if you were saying longevity-wise, Joe Burrow, of course, no question, because I don't know how much longer Geno Smith's going to be in the league. They're going to encase him in bronze and put him in Seattle for the rest of his life. But right now, yeah, sure. I'm sorry, IK and Polly. I'm sorry to do this to you, but it's Geno Smith.
This is amazing. I finally converted Rick. It's taken a lot of hard work. It's taken like a month of saying Geno Smith will be in the Seahawks Ring of Honor one day. And it's finally I finally done it. Justin, move on. I don't need to answer this question. You already know what my answer is going to be.
Well, keep in mind, remember, too, I also picked the Commanders, Lions, and Cardinals to win their divisions this year. So the kiss of death is upon Geno Smith now.
So in order to counteract that kiss of death, you're going to force me to be blasphemous against my Lord and Savior this week.
Well, it's not blasphemous against Geno as much as it is more of a favoritism towards Burrow, if you want to look at it that way.
Anyways, obviously it's been a little bit rough for Cincy, but aside from that Steelers game, I don't really put their losses on good old Joey Primetime, because at the end of the day, he has gotten them to the point late in the game where they can tie it and win it, and the defense needs to step up. And part of the reason is also Zach Taylor's just not a good coach. Like, that Super Bowl appearance protected him. Zach Taylor's not that good of a coach, which, I mean, to be fair, you hire someone just because they had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, probably should diversify the hiring process a little bit there, Cincy. But in all seriousness, like, I think Burrow has done his job. Would I like a little bit more? Yes. But I also think there have been factors pertaining to why the Bengals probably aren't as good as people expected them to be. And when I say expected, what I mean is some people say that the Bengals should be good this year because they're still spiteful about the fact that the Bengals ruined all their playoff predictions last year because the Bengals actually made it out of the AFC. So to a majority of the experts that are on Cincy's case this year, I don't buy it because there's explicit reasons why you're being tough on them. That being said, game-winning fourth quarter, I'm going to take the guy that's won a national championship. I'm going to take the guy who's been to the Super Bowl already. I will take Joe Burrow, but this close, Geno Smith. Yeah.
Seattle Ring of Honor member Geno Smith.
Justin, I have to counteract the curse that Rick is trying to lay on Geno right now. He's picking him for a reason, so I have to go against Geno Smith. I have to do it. I have to protect him. That's my guy. Geno Smith is my guy this season. I need to protect him.
Yeah, until Drew Lock comes in next week.
Hey, that's shooter sleeve. Two of my favorite terrible quarterbacks on one team. I love it.
That's right.
Terrible. How dare you?
For the people, terrible. In reality, future Ring of Honor and all accessory team backup quarterback, Drew Lock.
God, I miss Trevon Boykin.
Moving on, Justin.
Next.
Please.
All right. So I was also, like I said, looking at a lot of stats this week. At this point, these two guys are tied. Who do you think finishes with more receiving yards? Jamar Chase or Travis Kelce?
Ooh.
Now, I don't believe they're exactly tied. I believe actually Kelce has a couple more yards. Let me just get the exact numbers here for you.
It's funny to say that about a guy who just only had 25 yards in his last game, but he had the 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, so Kelce's got 347 yards, and Chase has 343.
That's really close. So I will go with, I'll go with Jamar Chase. Nothing against Travis Kelce, of course. I think the way that they are using Kelce in certain moments, like we might see another game like that this season where it's like 3 touchdowns but 55 yards. Whereas I think because of how the Bengals season has gone early on, like, yes, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are both good, but this passing game is going to go the way that Jamar Chase goes. And I think he understands that. I think Jamar Chase is supremely talented receiver, of course. That somebody on the show picks him to get 1,500 yards before the season. So let's step it up tomorrow. Then again, also pick Kelce to do that. So what am I saying? At the same time, it's going to be 1,502 and 1,501. I'm going to be right on both of them. But in all seriousness, Jamar, I think he understands him being the definitive number one guy. Whereas I think with the Chiefs, it's been like 1 week Juju is the guy. 1 week Marquez Valdez-Scantling reminds us that he signed with the Chiefs this offseason, weirdly enough. I think there's a little bit more going around things in the Chiefs offense potentially. Whereas I think the Bengals, like Jamar is he is the alpha on that team. He should be the guy. And I think he will I think it's a slow start, which I think kind of his rookie season started slightly. Well, no, he was great last year from the get-go, but he had a very strong end to the season. I think that could be the case again, where he's going to get stronger as the season goes. So I'm going to say Jamar Chase, once again, being the guy who said both these guys would get 1,500 yards. So splitting hairs here.
So here's my counter argument to that. Looking at their yards, that's fine. I mean, receptions, Kelce has one more catch than Chase does right now, 33 and 32. What I look at is the targets. Travis Kelce has caught 33 passes and been targeted 42 times. So that's a pretty consistent catch ratio. Jamar Chase has caught 32 passes and been targeted 53 times. Now, to that end, I say, yeah, obviously Chase is going to be your number one, so he's going to be targeted more. But the consistency with which Kelce catches the football, it cannot be understated. And I mean, yes, you were talking about a tight end being higher than a premier prolific number one receiver. But I do think that Travis Kelce has become the number one option in this Chiefs offense. I mean, they do have a receiver core that's solid enough, but the reliable guy is Travis Kelce, and he's showing that on a given basis. Like, yeah, he's not streaking down the field for an 80-yard catch on one play, but he could do that on 2 or 3 plays. He could cobble up 80 yards on 3 or 4 catches, and also, by the way, get you 2 touchdowns in that process, whereas Jamar Chase, that 80-yard bomb gets you 1 score. And then the defense has to really, react to it. Whereas I think Travis Kelce, they're not sure. He's more of a unicorn. Sorry, Porzingis, it's not you. He's more of a unicorn in the sense where he's a wide receiver in a tight end's body with wide receiver speed and just the ability to find the ball, find the open space, and make the catches that he needs to. I'll put it to you like this. If it was a 2-minute drill, I would trust Travis Kelce more than I would Jamar Chase to get open and down the sideline and to make the catches. I would trust him 100% more. So I would go with Kelce for sure.
Well, definitely in the 2-minute drill, I agree with you there. But, I mean, Travis Kelce's a tight end. He's not the guy on the sidelines in the 2-minute drill. So that's just I don't disagree with what you said, but I don't know how you can compare them just within the 2-minute drill.
Well, my one point is that I would trust at that point. I would trust more that even in double coverage, Travis Kelce could find his way to the football and find his way to the sideline. Whereas Jamar Chase, he might be double or triple, or he might be taken out of a play by a shutdown corner a little bit easier than a Kelce would. Because, yeah, Kelce's a tight end, but he's also probably going into coverage against linebackers who are spying on the QB, who are not equipped to drop back into full coverage. So I think that he would be a little more reliable in cases to catch the football. I mean, we saw that in the 42-36 game a couple of years ago, or last year when he was open. Gabe Davis had a great game, but Travis Kelce was Mr. Reliable, and he was there at the very end. He's the guy that I think would be more reliable in that instance. Whereas Jamar Chase, you're talking about one guy who's got that good speed, but Kelce has that range to get open wherever he is on the field.
All right.
I mean, we're talking about two of the best at the end of the day, so you're splitting hairs ultimately.
Of course, but that's the point of the game.
Very true. Very true. And that was another. That was the last Would You Ever, right? Or do we have one?
The last one. So
that was the last one. But we introduced a new game recently, ladies and gentlemen. And it's become very popular, actually. This is a fan favorite. It's a show favorite. I think Sandoval likes it. Then again, Justin wouldn't care if he does or not. It's NFL Fact or Fiction, ladies and gentlemen. Justin gives us a statement, obviously regarding the NFL, and me and Rick decide: is he spitting facts or is he capping us? Is he writing fiction here? So, Justin, this week's edition of Fact or Fiction.
All right, guys. Well, we were talking about the Chiefs, and I figured maybe we'll move over to another team in that division. The Chargers are still a legitimate contender to win the AFC West. Fact or fiction?
Well, this is the guy who will pick them to go 16-1. We saw how well that worked out. I think fact, because I think there's still plenty of time for the Chargers to get right. I think they have enough weapons on both sides of the ball to really compete. I don't know if they can run the same track meet that Kansas City runs on most of the time here. But I think they're a team that has the ability to kind of separate themselves from the rest of the AFC West and make it be a 2-horse race between them and Kansas City, not Denver, even though they're the Broncos. No horses for you, Russell Wilson. I think I look at what they have coming up schedule wise, and it's somewhat favorable, I think, for them going into their second game against Kansas City. And the thing was that they end with Kansas City extremely early, so I think that can give them a little more time to kind of run up some more points on some of these other bad teams that are out there, while Kansas City's slugging it out with other good opponents they have on their more difficult schedule. So I'm going to say fact. I'm not confident in it, but I think based upon timing and based upon roster makeup, I think they have enough to compete with the Chiefs.
I think this will certainly be. I mean, just generally speaking, can they compete with Kansas City? Yes. I don't think there's any arguing that. But I just think this season, Kansas City's been on even with all the losses they took in the offseason and the expectation that they were going to take a step back, they're just taking it to another level. Justin picked Lamar Jackson as his MVP favorite going into the season. There's another quarterback with just one MVP award that's, starting to build a pretty good case for himself with some of his performances. Because Patrick Mahomes, he's just reminding everyone, like, hey, by the way, I'm still that guy. And in case you've forgotten, here we are. This is barely, because I very much do love the Los Angeles Chargers. Think of my hatred for the Titans and then just make it the complete opposite. I really do like the Chargers. But I got to say right now, for this season, what I'm seeing, fiction. And again, it's nothing to do. This isn't necessarily even to do with the talent of that team, but Keenan Allen's missed some time. Mike Williams only just recently became effective. Austin Eckler only just had his first good game this season. We need to see if that's going to be consistent. Before that game, both Eckler and the rest of that running back core as a whole were averaging less than 3 yards per carry, or just about that. So it was not looking good. And the defense is nicked up a little bit as well. Joey Bosa is once again hurt. Take a shot if you've heard that before, which is essentially every single season. J.C. Jackson started the season a little bit dinged up. He's been fine, but he hasn't looked like the same number one corner he was in New England. Is this team talented? Yes. Are they going to be a playoff team? Confidently, yes. But I just think this season, even when we expect the Chiefs to just take a slight step back, they're just not there. And it's just one of those things that just makes you wonder, just makes you realize, that whole championship DNA cliche, the Chiefs got it, man, in spades. So fiction, tragically, because I do love the Chargers, but fiction.
All right, and just a little bit of breaking news as that happens. They did list Keenan Allen as doubtful for this week's game on Monday. All right. Speaking of tough divisions, though, fact or fiction, the NFC East is the toughest division in football.
Absolutely a fact. Absolutely a fact. I mean, Philadelphia is the only unbeaten team remaining, so that automatically makes it a difficult division. The Giants have been a revelation this year under Brian Daboll. I know Daniel Jones is not making mistakes. They are playing excellent football on defense and on offense, even though they have nobody to throw the ball to on offense. They're using little no-names, little creative players, basically, on offense to catch the ball. I mean, Richie James, who the hell is he? I don't know. The Cowboys have been resurgent underneath Cooper Rush, which I think has been amazing, but it's also their defense. We were talking about them, how scary they are. And don't sleep on my Washington Commanders, man. We're 2-4, and Wentz is out. Heineke could start next week. The renaissance of Taylor Heineke starting. Let's go, commies. In all seriousness, though, yes. I think the NFC East, fact, no question about it, is the toughest division in all football right now. I was the AFC West going in, but we've seen Denver and Las Vegas have struggled. So, yeah, now it's the NFC East.
Yeah, I got to say, for the context of this season, I got to run with a fact. You have two of the top whatever defenses you want to place them at between the Eagles and the Cowboys. Both have performed even above the expectations. You would have thought the Cowboys front seven is absolutely lethal, and that Eagles defensive back crew, that might be the new no-fly zone here in the NFL, because those boys are dangerous. You got Big Play Slay, you got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who was a late pickup, by the way. He was literally weeks before the season started, maybe even the week before. It was very close to the start of the year. James Bradbury, who the Giants let go of, and that was only due to cap issues because Dave Gettleman sunk that team. The Eagles and Cowboys in and of themselves. Then you have the Giants, who, like Rick said, complete shift. Like kind of like how we talked about Doug Peterson, the job he did for the Jaguars. Brian Daboll has completely remedied the culture on that team. I think those guys are playing harder. They're playing better. They're playing to actually win games. Like I think, unlike the attitude of the previous coaches that were there, because for a while now the Giants have only had guys last 2 years here, the last couple of years. He has instilled it to the point where even when they're down, there's no change in the body language. Like Brian Daboll is not hands on his knees, head down. No, he's still acting like the game is tied. That's very, to have a coach like that, that's special. So I'm going to say fact. I think that is the toughest division to play right now. And honestly, for most fourth place teams, the Commanders are kind of middle of the pack in that regard. There are teams worse than them that are in fourth. There are teams better than them that are in fourth, which is kind of weird to say considering some divisions have teams tied. Irregardless, I'd say right now that division, like I've said it before, I'll say it again. The division of death this year, truthfully, it is not the AFC West. It is the NFC East. Justin, you're muted.
He can't hear himself.
Justin, you're muted.
All right, I'm back.
Are you? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. All right, and speaking of Eastern teams, Rick, we've loved to see it so far. Let me find out. Is this fact or fiction? Breece Hall is the leader to win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy!
You're making him pick against Bailey Zappi here.
Well, I mean, that's yes. See, that's the thing about this whole thing is there's not really anybody else who's been a rookie that's stepped up to that point where I can sufficiently say they could supplant him. I mean, maybe you're talking about a wide receiver, but I mean, Chris Olave has been good, but can it be sustainable? I mean, Drake London's been okay, but hasn't really been consistent. The only person I could possibly see taking it away from it is his own teammate. So I would say it could be a two-person race between Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. I love the way Garrett Wilson plays. I think that he is a stud. I think that he has Velcro for hands and he can find his way to the ball. Breece Hall has been electric. I can tell you that much for a fact. I think because of the fact that this draft was so defensive heavy and so offensive line heavy, the quarterbacks haven't really performed to what we thought they were going to. And the wide receivers, while they were drafted high, there's not really that breakout star yet. I mean, I know a lot of people said George Pickens could be that guy, but now that you have Kenny Pickett throwing him the ball, can he really be that guy with a rookie quarterback? Because that if Pickett does well and Pickens does well, Pickett's going to get the nod. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's three facts in a row for you, Justin. I think this is absolutely a fact.
Yeah, I'm not gonna try to play a contrarian here. Kind of like what Rick said. Like you mentioned the quarterbacks and them not performing; they're just not playing. and for an award that Offensive Rookie of the Year, it tends to be very stat orientated when it comes to Offensive Defensive Rookie of the Year. If you don't have the stats, you're not going to get good coverage. So I mean, it's going to take one of these guys coming onto the scene very soon and actually playing in order to make a real difference for that. I don't know if that's going to happen, A, and then B, you got to at least play competently, where Kenny Pickett right now, it's not looking the greatest for him. Now, granted, Matt Canada doesn't help having him as an offensive coordinator, but irregardless, he's just not looking like to his best of ability. So then you have to look at the skill position players, which for the last couple of years now, like skill position players have been making real runs at the award, with Jamar Chase winning it last year, and Justin Jefferson, it was between him and Justin Herbert in their rookie season. And I know Herbert won it. I still think you could have made a really great case for Justin Jefferson to have been the Offensive Rookie of the Year winner that year. So I would say Breece Hall, because then a lot of the wide receivers that you're thinking of, they either haven't played a lot or have been ineffective. Christian Watson, and nothing against him because I think he's been a little bit dinged up, in Sky Moore. They don't have the stats right now, like a Romeo Doubs, who has shown like a catch or two here and there, but nothing consistent, or even George Pickens. You mentioned him, Rick. Like, God, a lot of people fell in love with him with that preseason or training camp catch, and that one catch he had against the Browns, excuse me. We need more consistency. And then the other top guys, like you said, I think of the receivers, I think Wilson and Olave have been the top guys, which Ohio State, I mean, not surprising. But Drake London, could
Don't discredit Jahan Dotson too. He's had a
No,
very good year.
very true.
Yeah. He's hurt though. Yeah.
That and it's just like the big games. Like I think we've seen more of Olave and Wilson compared to Dotson and London. So Breece Hall, this is the opportunity.
I'll say this one thing too. I don't know if he's eligible or not, but if it wasn't for his performance last week, I'd give Cade York the offensive player rookie of the week right now, rookie of the year right now.
There we go.
If it wasn't for him going 0-2, he'd be a perfect 10 for 10.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, of course.
I mean, we can start the hashtag Cade York for offensive rookie of the year. I'm down for
it. That's a long hashtag. That's a very long hashtag.
We'll figure it out. We're not PR guys. No. But yeah, it's a fact for me as well, Justin. So you get between the two of us, you got 5 facts out of 6, which is a pretty good hit rate. So
I'm impressed.
Yeah. I mean, when we don't disagree, I mean, we're not going to make it up. We're not like some sports shows. But now, moving on. That was the fun part of the show. Of course, as you guys know, the slogan of the show is fun, football, chaos. We have moved on from the fun. Thank you, as always, Justin. You are the man when it comes to this stuff. Now let's go on to the football and what will be a slightly, tinged different version of the NFL Week in Review this time. Of course, we've kind of gone through game after game after game. We're going to switch it up, a little bit more going forward. Now that we have a little bit of a, better sample size compared to, like week 2. We've seen a couple games. We've seen team performances. So now we can really judge teams a little bit. We can ask some real questions in regards to some of these clubs. Some of them we've kind of probably already answered throughout the show, but I think it's very much, worth it to maybe revisit them. So let's go through this. And I mean, we kind of mentioned the Giants a little bit, so we will get to the Giants and the Jets very soon here. But let's start with a team that did get a win in a lot closer fashion than they would have liked last week. The Minnesota Vikings defeated the Chicago Bears 29-22. Now, obviously, the Vikings won, but that final score, it doesn't reflect things. That game was a blowout. It was 21-3. The Vikings were handling everything. But the Chicago Bears put points on the board. Justin Fields had a passing touchdown. Blasphemous. But the Bears made it a relatively close game, and it was closer than what many people would have expected. Justin, I'm going to throw it over to you first so we can get some analysis from our boy now in this episode. Minnesota Vikings, right now they're in the lead in the NFC North. How real of a contender are they looking like in the playoff picture right now in the NFC? Are they the team that their record shows, which is a top team in the division right now, or are people just going to ignore some of the blips on the radar we've seen because their record is so sparkling at this point?
I mean, this is just such classic Minnesota Vikings, though, right? I mean, they're a good team. They are being competitive. The only difference is they're winning these close games. And yeah, you're right. This game should not have been close, but they're winning these close games. I think have they been in a game besides that first one where they won by multiple scores? Every single game has been down to the wire.
You said just that they won or overall, because they got shellacked by the Eagles. If we're being fair.
Yeah. No, primetime Kirk Cousins doesn't count. But look, they are a good team this year. I still have them as a playoff team. I think they're going to do well. I don't know that they could sustain this. I have a feeling that Packers game is going to be closer than a lot of people say. They would have to lose a different division game, I think, for the Packers to catch up, or at least have the tiebreaker, and then it would come down to total points or something like that. But look, I still think the Packers are a better team overall, and we're going to see that outcome eventually. Nothing to do with how well that the Vikings have played, because I do think they've played well, and there's been issues, of course, but yeah, I have them making the playoffs. I don't know about winning their division.
I mean, that's fair. And I'm kind of on the side. Like, I was on the side before the start of the season. My biggest thing was I wasn't the biggest fan of this Minnesota defense. Like, I felt that there's a bit too much youth, especially in that secondary. And I'll give them credit here and there. It's looked fine. But I think, that second half tells me something. It's that this Vikings team, they're still not all the way there, clearly. So they're not a true blue coach. Yeah, that as well. Who's, gotta admit, has done a pretty good job of it so far, regardless. For me, the barometer for the Vikings is simply put that second Packers game. Come that second Packers game, what's the situation? What are the records, and can you beat them? If they can sweep the Packers in the regular season, I think that would tell me a lot more about this team.
Make them the team to beat in that division.
Yeah, especially going forward now with this Packers championship window that could be the last hurrah for that in and of itself. Rick, not so much about the Vikings. I mean, if you want to mention the Vikings, you can. But this kind of leads to the next topic here. 4-1 team you're more confident in. The Vikings or Giants? Because we mentioned the Packers. That Giants comeback victory against the Packers. I think the Packers were up 17-3 towards the end of the first half, and they just could not hold on. They could not get anything going in that second half, and that was the result.
Well, let me tell you, I was thoroughly impressed with the resolve of this Giants team going into London, and yeah, they were down 17-3, but again, as you mentioned, this is a different Giants team than in years past. This is a team that didn't quit, and it's a team that also found different ways to score. I mean, look, that double reverse by Daniel Bellinger was clearly a Philly special that Green Bay had snuffed out, but they forgot, we got to tackle the guy, so that was a bit of an issue. And then Gary Brightwell with his first career NFL touchdown, that was a nice little touch. And then Saquon came back, and Saquon is turning it up. I mean, he has needed to step up this season, and he has been phenomenal for them. He has been an absolute player for them. Is it sustainable for the Giants? That's the big question. I don't really know, because they're winning, but all these games are close. I mean, I'll shout out my wife because she says this all the time. She says, can they at least win a game that's, not close, that's not heart-wrenching? And I said, well, they beat Chicago by 8, but that's not enough. Giants fans want a big win. And I mean, is it going to come up in the next couple weeks? I don't know if it's going to, because, yeah, I mean, look at what they have coming. They got Baltimore, which is Justin's MVP pick versus the former defensive coordinator. So if anyone knows how to turn on defense against the Ravens, it could be the guy who was on the sidelines who saw them play. Then you have the Jaguars, and then Geno Smith. So it's like, is it sustainable? I don't know. I mean, I'm confident in Minnesota because I think their division has a little more wiggle room. Because, again, like, you're not talking about – I would say you're talking about 3 good teams in that division, but, you could say 2 because Detroit is Detroit, whatever. But in the NFC East, as group of death as it is, the Commanders are so far behind that it's really just the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Cowboys already have a win over the Giants this year. The Eagles played them twice to end the year. So I think the Vikings have a little more control, a little more confidence. But I got to tell you, this has been a lot of fun watching this Giants team play. It really has been. They are inspired. They are energized. They are really just playing for all the right reasons. And again, I think what it is, Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are playing for their New York football lives at this point.
Yep.
And they're finding ways to win. I mean, I mentioned it. Look at that roster. Daniel Bellinger is your tight end who has risen from anonymity. David Sills was, nobody. Richie James, no one. They had Marcus Johnson last week catch a couple of passes that were huge on third down. They're finding ways to win with, like, the replacements, basically. Yeah. That's something that's just amazing. But is it sustainable? I don't really know. I'm going to lean Minnesota just because I don't know if it is sustainable for the Giants. But it's been a great story in the first 5 weeks.
Yeah, very, very much so. And it makes you wonder if their big guns would actually play.
I gotta say, Rick, I'm surprised. I would have thought you would have chose defense and running the ball over inconsistency at quarterback and giving up points.
So my thing is, again, I lean towards, I know they both have first-year coaches, but I lean towards the fact that Minnesota, as of now, like if you go into this week, Minnesota's got Miami on a third-string quarterback, whereas the Giants have a possible NFL MVP. And then you just continue from there, and it looks like it.
I'm not saying that I think maybe the Giants would win more games than Minnesota. I'm just saying the Giants' style of play is, in my mind, more sustainable than the Vikings. The Giants will stay who they are, and they will be competitive in every game, as opposed to the Vikings, who may give up 40 points next week.
No question about it. But here's my catch-22. I mentioned it. Daniel Jones is not making mistakes. Is that sustainable for 17 weeks? I don't know. I don't think so. He hasn't played a full 17 weeks where he hasn't been the error-prone Danny Dimes. Whereas Kirk Cousins, sure, you can say, well, primetime Kirk Cousins, they don't play every game in prime time. So he's got an opportunity to win games that are at 1 o'clock and be fine and be a guy who's okay. And again, Justin Jefferson outclasses everybody on the Giants receiving core. I think even KJ Osborne could at this point because, again, who do the Giants have? They're winning, but who do they have?
Well,
that's the thing.
Who's performing is the big thing because they're paying guys, they've invested in guys, but they're not performing. Kadarius Toney and Kenny Golladay. Has Kenny Golladay caught a touchdown pass as a Giant yet?
I think Kenny Golladay caught a flu from us last week, but that's pretty much it.
Zach Wilson has more receiving touchdowns. Andrew Thomas has more receiving touchdowns than Darius Toney
and Andrew Thomas. Yikes!
And Kenny Golladay.
Yeah. God. Kenny Golladay through 4 games, 2 catches, 22 yards, no touchdowns. Kadarius Toney has not seen the field.
Bro, no way.
And Wan'Dale Robinson, 5 yards on 1 catch. How about that?
And yet we are not getting paid the same amount.
Yeah.
We're doing just as much as them technically on the football field.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this, ladies and gentlemen, we will sell out if it means getting paid and becoming the official podcast.
Look, does anyone know if their punter's back from England yet? Because I could go over there and kick for them. I mean,
Oh, man. I mean, speaking of New York teams, you talk about excitement, guys. You talk about teams going a little bit above expectations. And, Justin mentioned the Dolphins. It's funny because he mentioned the Vikings, saying, well, the Vikings could let up 40 points. I don't know if that's going to happen this week, considering Skylar Thompson's the starting quarterback there. Teddy Bridgewater got his lights knocked out, just like Tua's, essentially, although very less graphic, in the last game for the Dolphins. In this Jets game, very early on, did good old Teddy Two Gloves get knocked, and it fell upon the rookie 7th-round pick, Skylar Thompson, and one man for him. The Jets absolutely shellacked the Dolphins 40-17 in that one. Moving to 3-2, both New York football teams above 500 for the first time in a while. It's got to feel at least a little bit good. Also, for the Jets, that win snapped a 12-game losing streak against the AFC East as a whole. So that was a good one right there. Rick, I'm going to throw it to you. I think the most interesting thing about this game for me was the fact that the Jets put up 40 points, but Zach Wilson didn't have a single passing touchdown. I think that's actually the unique portion of it. I feel like we've kind of already spoken a little bit about the Jets in this result, but is there anything new you take away from the Jets as a team as a whole from this game, or?
It's a team that I think now has a significant 1-2 punch at the running back position. And I think that's what you were hoping for and expecting. But maybe it's a little different now because I don't know what you were expecting out of Breece Hall and Michael Carter. I don't know who's going to be the Thunder and who's going to be the Lightning in that duo. But it's clear now that Breece Hall, I think, has earned your every down back, or at least your first and long, second and long back, whereas Michael Carter, he can punch it in from a short distance and be like your short gain guy. I think that's really where this team, again, you're right. Zach Wilson didn't throw a touchdown, didn't throw an interception, was 14-21 for 210 yards, looked a lot better. And again, it doesn't matter how you win games. You win games on the ground with 5 rushing touchdowns, you still win the game. And I mean, it was good right out of the gate to see Sauce Gardner, plant Teddy Bridgewater for that safety for intentional grounding. Not good that he got hurt, but good that was the first play. Because it was a play that it was dialed up because it was the advantage of Miami starting very deep in their own territory. Let's run a blitz. Teddy Bridgewater's not going to have a lot of time. It was a great play design. And the defense just went from there. C.J. Mosley, Quan Alexander, both 10 tackles in that game each. Like, it was a total team. As close as it was, and it was close, because the Dolphins did score a couple touchdowns in the second quarter, and they made it a 2-point game in the third. The Jets had to get away, and they did. They took advantage of Skylar Thompson's first NFL action at the very end. So the defense turned it up in the third and fourth quarters, absolutely. It was a great win, and that's why I sent you guys in our text the standings for the playoffs that have right now at the playoffs time today, the Jets are the 5 seed in the AFC, which we got to feel pretty good about ourselves. I mean, don't look at who you're playing because you're playing Baltimore, but feel good that you're there at least.
Hey, if the Chiefs and the Giants win this week and the Jets can pull out a win in Green Bay, they're the number 2 seed.
Yeah, how about that?
Would you look at that? Justin, if there's one thing, at least for me, that's really sticking out about this Jets team is that this defense that has a couple young pieces on it, it's performing pretty good. Like, if you want to talk about a team that can surprise you on any given week, it's kind of got to be like you mentioned, the formula for winning what the Giants got in terms of the running game and the defense. That's kind of what the Jets are developing here in terms of the 2 running backs and the defense. Obviously, we're not doing this to place early expectations because as these are 2 of the more realistic Jets fans I know, they're not going to predict playoffs right now. But I mean, this has got to feel good, Justin. Like 5 weeks ago, you were hopeful. But you were still, I mean, both of you were hopeful. Like, what have these first 5 games shown you about your team here, man?
That I want more rookies. the rookies got to play. They're playing excellent. They're the difference maker right now on this team. I know you guys mentioned Zach Wilson did not have a passing touchdown. He didn't need to. Honestly, I can't even remember. Did they even have inside the 10-yard line a shot to the end zone? I think they kept running the ball because it was working. It wasn't necessary. So, I mean, is Zach Wilson the answer? I don't know yet. The Jets played a really great game. The defense played really well. If there was one criticism, is that Raheem Mostert ran all over that team, but it was from behind, so it helped run out the clock. There's definitely holes. There's definitely things to clean up. They're young, but we're finally seeing some results from all these Joe Douglas drafts where they had such great draft picks, and everyone was like worried. All right, year 1 draft maybe wasn't all that great. The year 2 draft, it's okay, but we're not seeing results. Year 3 came in, and we have serious playmakers, especially on offense. Sauce has played great, especially on offense. We've had real difference makers. But yeah, it's exciting Jets football for the first time in a long time.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you mentioned, Justin, all the drives the Jets had where they scored points were runs inside, because all the pass plays were long pass plays that were stopped at the 1 or the 2.
Brees got stopped at inside the 5 on long pass plays at least twice.
Which I mean, is an insult to any fantasy owner that has Zach Wilson, because guys, get 1 more yard, get to the end zone.
Think about all those leagues that have extra points for long touchdowns, and Brees kept getting stopped at the 1. He would have had 3 touchdowns that week instead of just 1.
Yeah. So Jets, the Jets, exciting. The Giants, shocking people. New York football is back. We always say this about basketball mainly. When we always say basketball is better when the Knicks are good. The problem is the Knicks choose to never ever be good. I feel like the same thing can be said for football. When the Giants and Jets are more than respectable teams, it's better for football. We're seeing that this year. Both those teams are doing a good job here. So those are some of the notable questions. Of course, we got more. Some games we're just going to skip, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think the guys have much to say about the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers game. It was 38-3. If anything, do you have anything to say, Justin? Your lips twitching there.
I mean, did they play the second half?
Allegedly.
Hey, Case Keenum played the second half.
I was going to say, Josh Allen had 330 yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Just thought that needed to be said. We can move on.
It's not much else needs to be said. We could have moved on after Rick mentioned Case Keenum, but regardless, the Buffalo Bills absolutely destroying the Pittsburgh Steelers. Revenge for that Week 1 game last season for him. Good for you, Buffalo. And the MVP case for Josh Allen growing ever so more. The Los Angeles Chargers 30-28 game. I think we said out here on the pod a couple of weeks ago when they were 1-2 and they needed to get these back-to-back wins against the Texans and the Browns, even though they were banged up. This wasn't a statement game by any means, but what this game at least told me was the fact that when it comes to the Los Angeles Chargers, there's a little bit of we can step up in them. And I think that's the biggest thing that team needed after what was a disappointing Chiefs game, which was close, that they just got unlucky in with the interception, and the Jacksonville Jaguars game where they absolutely got slaughtered and also got a little bit dinged up there. So I think that was good bounce-back wins for the team as a whole. Or back-to-back wins, I should say, for them as a whole. The game against the Texans, they put up points. They put up points in this one and got the important win. And I think a little bit of luck, because I think the Browns had to miss a late field goal as well for this to happen, which, I mean, we mentioned earlier with Cade York in his Offensive Rookie of the Year campaign. Kind of hurts him a little bit, but at the same time, important one for the Chargers right there to try to keep pace in that division. But more so the wild card hunt as a whole in the AFC, because, I mean, Rick mentioned the standings. Heads are right next to each other. No one's really, swimming above water confidently right now. A lot of teams are right there. It's like a little bottleneck effect in regards to that. Patriots shut out the Lions. I don't think we need to ask any questions about that. This is the game I want to focus on just a touch here, boys. The Saints Seahawks game. Aside from the fact that Geno Smith's Ring of Honor case improved in this one, what really was interesting here was finally, and this is kind of what we talked about in terms of missing Sean Payton here, the use of Taysom Hill. And I said in the group chat itself, dang you, Taysom Hill, dang you. Because the Saints finally started using Taysom Hill, and it paid off. He went absolutely off in this one, accounting for 4 touchdowns, 112 rushing yards. it was a game for Taysom Hill. In a game where Geno Smith 3 passing touchdowns, Tyler Lockett had a big game, and Kenneth Walker even 88 yards and rushing touchdown, which you'll see a lot more of that going forward. Justin, to you, could this maybe be a little bit of a turnaround? Because you mentioned the Saints offense just very briefly earlier in terms of their defense is great, but their offense has been here and there. Could this be that game that maybe Dennis Allen can start to get a little bit of magic going for this team? Because it's taken him a little bit to figure things out offensively there.
I don't see this being a measuring stick for their offense. I know Andy Dalton was quarterback last week, and we're waiting on Jameis Winston to get back. But at this point, Seattle can't stop a nosebleed. So, look, they played a great game. It was a good, well-deserved win against a good football team. I got to give Seattle credit. I had no expectations coming into this year. I was surprised that people were going to let them on the field. And Geno Smith has stepped it up, shut my mouth. And a lot of those offensive players, they did have a significant injury in that game with Rashad Penny. Unfortunately, he'll be done for the season. But scoring points on a team that is the worst defense points wise in the league doesn't mean that you're going to be okay next week on offense. In my mind,
that's fair. That's very fair. Ultimately speaking, yeah, I didn't. For me, this game didn't really tell me too much. Like I'm kind of more with you. Like, I mean, it's good to be able to use a weapon like Taysom Hill, and maybe they can figure out to get him in the offense more so. Is he always going to have a game like that? I mean, I hope not. If I'm going to keep picking against the Saints, I hope not. But that at least to me, it shows me that there is potential for the Saints and Dennis Allen to maybe be a little bit better offensively, just in regards of knowing how to use their guys. Because at least for me, the first couple of weeks, it just felt like Rick, I'll throw this to you because I think you can attest to this. Like I said from the preseason, there's going to be a difference from Sean Payton to Dennis Allen in terms of knowing how to use their offensive players. I think we've seen that so far the first couple of weeks. Just saying, maybe this could be the game that helps them out here.
I mean, look, I think when you're looking at these two teams, when you're thinking about the Saints offense, we got to go with the expectation that Jameis Winston obviously wasn't going to be the guy. Andy Dalton has been a serviceable backup, I think. But, yeah, look, this team does still run with Taysom Hill. This team still has that capability to throw him out there for gadget wildcat plays. How do you defend him? That's the question. I mean, you go back and look at the history of the Wildcat offense and look back at Darren McFadden and when Miami slaughtered New England back in, I think it was 2008, when the Wildcat was brand new and nobody had ever heard of it. I mean, it's faded away, but you could conceivably have Taysom Hill run a Wildcat consistently for New Orleans because it's been 14 years and Seattle couldn't stop him. So maybe there's other defenses that can't stop it either. I mean, especially when you consider the fact that, if everyone's going to look at Alvin Kamara and kind of guard him and try and stop him, you need somebody else. If Taysom Hill's your other guy, it's not a bad look. It's not a bad option to have him be there who can throw, who can catch, who can run. He's basically his own punt, pass, and kick competition, essentially. So, it's a possibility he could be the guy. He could be that special player that he was when he first came in, that we could say he could be the next Taysom Hill. Now it's not really a few years ago it was an insult because it meant what position do you want to play because you don't have a position you can play, period. But now it's a case where Taysom Hill, you could be like, oh, Swiss Army knife. I like it.
Yeah, could very much be the case, and really could be an offensive jolt in some way for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, let's keep it in division a little bit in terms of a team that actually lost to an NFC West team, and that was the Panthers and the 49ers. Oh, dear God, that game turned ugly really quickly. It was a 37-15 game. The Carolina Panthers absolutely got crushed. It was not beautiful, but there was one positive, especially for someone on this podcast. The Matt Rule era came to an end. We salute you, Matt Rule. You gave the NFL a chance. Go back to college, buddy. But yeah, it was an ugly end to a error. Maybe you could call it more so than an era. And what a blaze of glory to go out and losing by 22 points. Once again, losing to a team where they scored over 17 points on you, which is final record against teams like that was 1 in 27 or something like that. It was not good in any way, shape, or form. And Baker Mayfield, 20 for 36, 215 passing yards, and 1 interception. Woof. But that does mean no more Matt Rule. Now, does that mean something else? Rick, quick question for you when it comes to the Carolina Panthers. And this is actually a conversation I heard, and actually Justin kind of gave to us a little private conversation here in private chat that the Bills, maybe the Bills could trade for him, but the Panthers are now looking for more serious offers, or seriously considering offers for Christian McCaffrey here. Do you think the Panthers are just going to tear down some of the foundation there in terms of Christian McCaffrey gone, maybe DJ Moore? Like, what's the potential that we could see a bit of a tear down there in Carolina?
I don't know. I mean, here's the problem with looking for a serious offer for Christian McCaffrey. This has really been his first season that he stayed healthy for the most part. You don't really know for sure if this is a guy who can stay healthy consistently. And that would hurt your value getting back from him. Sure, he's a very talented player, don't get me wrong. But, if health-wise is a big issue, then you got to know what you're getting out of him before you even sign that deal. Look, this Carolina team is in shambles. They really are. I think they have good pieces that you could move around. I look at their defense and I think of guys like Shaq Thompson, who's had a pretty decent season so far. I look at J.C. Horn, who's a talented corner. But there's just not really enough there for me to say that they can conceivably give away the farm and get back a stockpile of picks back. I think Steve Wilkes is in a tough position because I think that he's basically been given kind of what he had in Arizona for that 1 year, minus the terrible ownership that knew he was a lame duck. I mean, yeah, he is a lame duck right now. We know this for a fact. But you have to see what you have out of your guys. You have to see what you have out of PJ Walker, because you're not going to have Mayfield this week. You're not going to have Darnold for another couple weeks. So it's got to be PJ Walker. I mean, you mind-blowingly still haven't had Colin Kaepernick come back. And look, PJ Walker, the one drive that he had last week, I get it. It was garbage time, but he looked reliable enough. He was 5 of 6 for 50 yards. He had Carolina at the 25-yard line for that drive, and he got them to the San Francisco 30. Now, at that point, you're down 37-15, so taking the points, which is the title of our episode this week, isn't really an ideal thing to do. But, I mean, what it showed was it was a good drive. You had talent and potential. It's just, can PJ Walker consistently keep that going when you have this week against the Rams A defense?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say this. It really pains me to say this, but Carolina might want to start warming up, Johnny Hecker to throw some passes, because I feel like PJ Walker might get crushed in the first quarter, and then you have no emergency backup quarterback after that. I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh. Hey, Johnny Hecker, former Ram, revenge game.
Yeah. Possibly. Very possibly.
You never know. You never know in that scenario. Didn't it? Wait, this is me forgetting previous news. Didn't Carolina get Matt Corral? Is he injured?
He's hurt. He's out for the year.
He's hurt. Never mind. Yeah. I thought it was. I thought it was only temporary. I completely forgot.
No. He's hurt for the year. He suffered a pretty significant foot injury in preseason and was put on IR. Yeah, it was Frank. Yeah,
that's tough. That's a tough one.
That's not a fun injury.
No, especially because I think at the end of his college career he suffered a foot injury as well. So that just sucks. Back-to-back foot injuries for Matt Corral. Hope he gets better.
Yeah.
Clearly, as hope for the best, as I completely forgot he got injured in the first place. A couple more teams here to discuss a little bit. I mean, we don't need to go too in depth with these two teams because I think we've sung all their praises in and of itself. The Cowboys Rams game, it was complete defensive domination by the Cowboys. They absolutely blitzed Matthew Stafford, and it just did not look good at all. Michael Parsons, Marcus Lawrence, that defense looked great. And the Eagles defense as well did a pretty good job at the end. Got a little bit of help, though, because of a blatant error in terms of play calling by Cliff Kingsbury. I was critical of Zach Taylor before. Cliff Kingsbury, cut from the same cloth, a.k.a. offensive genius. Love making mistakes with the offensive play calling. And similar thing could probably be said about the Ravens-Bengals game where they messed up late in that game. It was like a 4th down, and What could the Bengals have done late in the game, Rick, instead of turning it over on downs?
Well, you have Evan McPherson there with you. So, I mean, I think when you have one of the youngest and best kickers in the game, you take the points, Cincinnati. God.
Yes.
Awful.
Yes. Several teams committed sins, ladies and gentlemen, and did not take the points. We'll get to one team in particular that didn't do that here towards the end.
One thing I do want to say, though, kudos to you, Philadelphia. You mentioned Arizona briefly. Philly took the points, and they won the game.
Yep.
So there you go. That's why we say it. Take the points.
And that's why Nick Sirianni, Coach of the Year candidate, Cliff Kingsbury, not Coach of the Year candidate. It's simple math, guys.
It is.
It's simple math.
I hate math.
Just take the points. Two biggest points of discussion I think to really talk about as we reach the end of this. NFL referees love mucking things up, ladies and gentlemen. Terrible, not one but two terrible roughing the passers call. Actually, technically three, because I think I saw a clip. There was one in the Lions and Patriots game, and now I know I brushed over that because it was a terrible game. But apparently there was a bad roughing the passer in that game as well that was called on Jared Goff. Now, am I going to count that? Yes, because I don't like NFL officiating. But at the end of the game, in all seriousness, at the end of the game between the Falcons and the Buccaneers, it was third down, I think was the situation. The Falcons have scored 15 points in the second half. Like, to the people that said that call didn't make a difference, the Falcons offense was actually doing something in that second half. And they maybe could have gotten a chance to tie it. And this is my problem, where a call like this doesn't give the teams and the players the chance to properly decide the result of the game. It's decided on a call. In all seriousness, it's decided on a call that was terrible. Like, let's be real here. Grady Jarrett was called for roughing the passer on Tom Brady in that game because he committed the sin of touching Tom Brady, which you're not allowed to do. Tampa Bay won that game 21-15. There was also a roughing the passer called in the Monday night game, a much better game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders, 30-29, called on Chris Jones, who had already stripped Derek Carr, and yet it was called on him because Chris Jones, how dare you not go against the laws of gravity, which is big man fall if he does not have balance. How dare you not defy the laws of gravity? How dare you not fall? How dare you, sir? How dare you? It was terrible. Justin, what were your thoughts on if you want to say the calls, but even just the BS attempt to explain the calls by the official? Like, maybe this is why we don't have the officials talk too much, because I'm sorry, those explanations were complete horse hockey to me. Like, it was garbage.
I don't really understand. I mean, there's got to be something where if that is called, they can get confirmation from upstairs, because the two that I saw with Brady, who got swung to the ground very, very gently, and Jones, who is the first ball carrier to ever be called for roughing the passer. Both times it did not, well, especially in the Kansas City one, the referee was not in position to call that, because even if he didn't have the ball, the Jones one wasn't a penalty. He braces his fall. He doesn't land with all his weight. He hits him, but that's what football is. So, and it was weird to me that the NFL doubled down on these wrong calls. I get that you want to protect your quarterbacks. That's where the money is. But you can't penalize games you can't penalize teams for playing quarterbacks that are good. They're never going to win. You're taking the competitiveness out of your own sport. So, do I think something needs to change? Yes. Do I have the answers? No. But those were rough calls, and they're lucky it didn't cost Kansas City the game.
Yeah. If it did, that arena would have lost even more, because those fans got really vocal after that.
I got news for you. That was a loud. I wasn't there. It was only on TV. That was a loud game. That fan base is loud.
Well, Justin, me and Rick have seen your setup. I feel like, with the setup and audio you have to listen to the game, it felt like you were probably closer to that game than we were.
Yeah.
Arrowhead routinely breaks the decibel record for pro sports. I know it was them, and it was what was, I guess, at one point Sleep Train Arena, the Sacramento Kings Arena. Those two arenas usually trade the record back and forth for decibels for the loudest crowds in a sporting event, which I don't know why that's a measured stat, but here we are. I'm going to be careful what I say, only because I do happen to know somebody whose job it is to kind of be part of the officiating crews for the NFL. So I'm gonna be very careful about framing this, but absolutely there has to be something that has to change in these rules. But because essentially you're making calls against the laws of motion and the laws of physics, which don't apply, but there's no real solid answer, because the only answers that you could have are creating a target radius which at that point, is basically a letters to knees thing against the quarterbacks. But at that
They
point,
did
it's like,
that.
they did
That
that,
exists
right?
right now.
Right,
And
and
there's
it
still,
doesn't work.
the only thing that you could do is either you make it two-hand touch, or the defender is not going to wrap up the quarterback anymore, and you're
Right.
going to have these issues where the referees don't know when the play is dead, the players don't know when the play is dead, people are going to get hurt for the late hits and things like that, and players are there's going to be guys that are going to lose money because they're not tackling.
Yeah, I mean, maybe what I'd love to see is some defensive coordinator in protest just have an 11-man zone. Just drop all the defensive ends into coverage. Rush nobody.
That would actually be
'Cause,
entertaining.
I mean, it would be creative. I mean, I would love seeing big BJ Raji, or one of these big guys, try and cover Tyreek Hill coming across the corner, because those hits would unfortunately result in more penalties, even though literally it's Tyreek Hill just bumping into BJ Raji and flying 20 yards backwards because it's 190 pounds soaking wet versus a 400-pound guy. So there's that. But yeah, there's no definitive answer for this. The only thing that I can say is, roughing the passer penalties like that should be reviewable. They're not at the moment. And that's the case where, and again, you're talking about judgment calls, and I understand that. Everything is a judgment call with officiating nowadays. That's why we're seeing the move to robot umpires in baseball. We're seeing a lot more replay, a lot more of all of this. The slope is getting slippery at this point, and it's kind of going to be where does it stop? And it's difficult. To get to the game, though, just quickly for the Raiders-Chiefs, what I will say is that's a classic case where both teams elected a two-point conversion at the end. I'm not mad about the Chiefs doing it because it made sense for the scoreline-wise, but I'm pissed off with the Raiders for not only how they did it, but why they did it. The Chiefs, it was, 29-23 or 30-23?
Yep.
So two-point conversion makes that a 9-point game, makes it a two-possession game, puts it out of reach. Go for the two there, fine, no big deal. The Raiders, you take the points. You've got the guy who's got the most points scored in the league at this point. You take the points. You go to overtime with the Chiefs. Maybe you get a tie out of it. Maybe you get a score, or maybe you're just too scared because you saw Hunter Renfrow fumble the ball twice on 2 consecutive plays earlier in the season. Maybe that's what it is, Josh McDaniels. You're a terrible head coach.
Yeah, I think that game, especially that two-point conversion call, really exasperated the fact that Josh McDaniels just that. We made fun of the Broncos' red zone offense earlier in the season, very much so. The Raiders' red zone offense deserves a lot of questions as well because their scheming in a lot of goal line situations has not been good. And that two-point conversion was yet another situation where this, again, the offensive minds this week, if we're talking about the biggest storylines, it was Matt LaFleur going away from the running game, even though A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones were both spectacular. It was yet another situation where Zach Taylor fumbles the bag despite the fact he has Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow on his team. It is Cliff Kingsbury, despite having Kyler Murray, who is the quarterback that makes his system look good, not having a consistent full 48-minute game of play calling. It is now Josh McDaniels, who learned at the knee of Belichick, again, messing up offensively. The offensive play calling gurus, and also Sean McVay being stifled by that Cowboys defense. That was the worst that he's looked. I think even worse than that Buffalo game from earlier in the season, to be honest. The offensive play callers, the guys who are supposed to be known for their offense, none of them did well this week. And a lot of them made baffling decisions. And that's something that really needs to be figured out in and of itself. I'm with you there. My last thing, not to bring it up too much because I do want to move on from it. My only thing I'll say about the officiating is this, because I'm with you, Rick, in regards to that. I understand that every play is a judgment call. And that's why, for the officials, my biggest thing is just one of two things. Can we try not to put them in the position where we need to talk about this, which I think the NFL has proven they don't really this happened a couple years ago with the whole defensive pass interference being a reviewable thing. And the reason why it was a flop was because almost every single time the call was upheld. And there were plenty of reviews there where it shouldn't have been upheld. And that's the problem, where I feel there are obvious fixes to me. Let me not say obvious fixes. There are ways to make it a little better. I just feel like the NFL is not doing it. And I don't know why they're not doing it. Because I understand that it's a subjective call. Then let's use, I just think better judgment all around needs to be taken. That's all I want to say. I just think better judgment can be had in that situation because we have a weekend. It's not just one, it's two. How often do we get two calls like that we have to talk about?
Look, 10 years ago, this is why we had the replacement referees come in for a few games because the referees couldn't get a contract, and then we had the replacements, and we saw how well that worked out. By the way, for the record, I picked correctly that Seattle Green Bay game. I was the only one to pick that game on the radio show that I was on at the time. Regardless,
did you pick both without a tie?
Well, no, literally that back then in my pre-podcasting days, it was just a straight pick. And I was the only one who said Seattle was going to beat Green Bay. And they did based upon that play at the end, which, was another infamous lore. The fact of the matter is that the more you try and restrict these referees, the more they're going to push back on it because it's just like, you're not doing anything to, like you said, Jerk, to affect anything. You're not changing anything. You're just adding more rules that are going to be ticky-tack. And then we're basically going to have penalties every single play for no reason at this point. It's just going to make a 6-hour game. It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, and the last thing we need is to, expand the playtime.
Right.
Honestly, it's
right.
Like baseball has game length issues. Let's not bring football to that, guys. Let's just figure it out. Let's use a little bit of common sense with our problem solving here. So that was the weekend review. A lot of questions. A lot of team begged a lot of questions. Will we have as many going forward? We will if stupid decisions keep being made. Take the points. And if you're an offensive play calling genius, quote unquote, let's use some offensive play calling there, buddy. Just say it. So we technically have to talk about this game. I don't want to.
Oh, Lucas entered the chat.
The Washington Commanders beat the Chicago Bears 12-7. In the definitive game where if you took the over, there was probably something genuinely wrong with you in terms of the point spread. I'm pretty sure everyone I knew took the under in that game, to say the very least. 12-7.
A win's a win.
We all lost.
We did, but a win is a win.
Yeah, well, a win is a win, but we all lost. I mean,
again, think about it like this, though.
Right.
We saw Matt Rule get fired. Ron Rivera had all of his issues this week with the Carson Wentz comments and then the Dan Snyder thing that we're not going to discuss because Dan Snyder can just go jump in a hole. But this game, I think, at least for now, saved Ron Rivera's job.
Yeah.
You could argue that he could have been gone if they had lost. And the fact of the matter is he had never beaten Chicago as a coach, and he played for Chicago as a player. So that was a nice touch. But it was an ugly game, but it saved Ron Rivera's job, I'm going to say. Yeah.
No, that's fair. I mean, I give props to Brian Robinson, who's probably going to be an important role in the offense going forward. 17 carries, 60 yards, a touchdown. Like, at least, that's a bright spot from this game.
Absolutely.
Not too much else after that. I will say this game reminded me Dante Pettis is actually still in the league somewhere on the Chicago Bears. And Justin Fields actually had a long touchdown. That was the 40-yard pass to Dante Pettis. So there was something. Justin, do you have any comments on this game?
No.
Justin's like, I want to move on. I don't blame you. I mean, I guess this game kind of shows the reason why Rick has his ban on Thursday Night Football. Like,
for Kirk Herbstreit, who is a terrible mark as it is, to when they're saying what the game is next week to say, we promise it'll be better, that tells you something. And for Al Michaels to be Al Michaels is just,
No. Yeah. Rick, so how many people Rick start beefs with by the end of this episode? That's a new tally. Probably more than what we saw points-wise scored in this game from both teams combined.
So when we get to 20, okay, I could probably do that. Yeah,
I mean, you probably could.
Oh, yeah, I could.
I mean, if we're talking about overall enemies you've made on the podcast.
Ooh. Well, yes, that's true.
I think we're over 20.
I mean, anybody who works at or owns a Dunkin', yes.
Over 20. He's attacked whole countries.
Yeah, very true.
Hey, the Welsh and I are good. The Belgians were getting there, but the Welsh and I are good.
What did the Belgians do to you?
I don't know.
Oh. Yeah, you know what? I think that's the perfect way to recap our thoughts on Thursday Night Football. It wasn't a good game. Amazon paid like $80 million for that. That's just something to think about.
They could have put me into space, but they instead bought Thursday Night Football instead. So, there's that.
Hey, I'm sure Jeff Bezos has already made his money back from this investment in and of itself. So,
yeah.
Got that. Let's move on to something a little bit more palatable not a little bit more palatable than that game, a lot more palatable than that game. And that is the Sports Agents of Chaos Pick Challenge. Guys, as you know, we do this every single week during this NFL season to add a little bit of fun and to add a little bit of flavor. This is where we start to dive into the chaos portion of the show. Still some football, but now we get into the chaos here on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. We go around in a snake order draft, picking a game that we are confident in on a point scale. We start with our 4-point game, which is our most confident one, all the way down to our 1-point game. At least one game needs to be an upset pick, and that upset pick must at the lowest be your 2-point game. Cannot be your 1-point game, guys. And if you want to be fancy for a week or a smart aleck, like yours truly can be sometimes, you can pick a tie to happen with your 4-point game that will be elevated to a 5-point game. So that if you want to be unique, that's something to say the least. And I'm looking at this schedule, and I'm not going to lie, boys. I think there could be a tie-worthy game in this one. But,
oh boy,
we'll wait and see.
Do it.
We'll wait and see if that happens here. But as I said, it is a snake format draft based off of the total cumulative points that we have gotten this season. And of course, our record keeper has done a fantastic job. Rick, please update the people on the standings.
All right. So last week, Jurg went 2 for 2 rather. He only won the 2-point and the 1-point game. So his 4-point streak was over. Thank you, Brian Dable. But Jurg still leads with 31 points. However, Justin is streaking towards the top of this leaderboard after a 2-win week that was his 4- and 3-point pick. Justin is now at 26 points on the season, 5 back of first place. I went 3 for 4, 3 and 1. And so I went to 19 points, and Sandoval is at 11. He only won 1 game last week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know who's doing the bodega horn honking, but good job on you. I don't know if that's not for me, so it might be Jurg. Maybe in Bristol there's something going on over there, doing the Bristol stomp.
Well, I mean, I heard a car honking outside for no reason, so I mean, you're asking the wrong person. No, I cannot look out my window right now.
Well, you probably should. It's probably safer that way. Yes, so I picked first this week again for the second week in a row. I feel better about it this week than I did last week because last week I had 1-0 and had to drink pumpkin coffee on the air. Thank you, Duncan, for that terrible treat. And I'll be honest with you, you're right. There are games here that are just brutal. It's a brutal week because of...
It's not easy for a 4-point game this week.
There's one game that I'm looking at that there's a couple, but there's one game that I'm looking at that I think I will take for it. I tossed up between one of two, and I think that Tampa Bay is hitting their stride at the right time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, this is not the game where Kenny Pickett's going to have his resurgence, I think. This is the game where I think you're going to see Tom Brady do what he does best. Because, again, a win is a win. We're not calling points out here. A win is a win. And I think Tampa Bay can beat and probably will beat Pittsburgh. I mean, of the games that are there may be one other 4-point game that I was looking at that maybe could have been a better one, but I don't trust that situation as much. I don't like Tom Brady, but I trust him to win a game here, and I think Tampa's going to beat Pittsburgh. So that's my 4-point pick.
That's fair. And I think that the big reason is still the fact that there's no TJ Watt, and that Steelers defense just has not played the same since TJ Watt left the lineup in week 1. Like it's evidently clear that, you expected them to perform a little bit better against teams like the Patriots and the Browns, and they just didn't. And because of that, I think it's safe to say there's not going to be a lot of picking. I will only disagree with one point you made, Rick. You said that Kenny Pickett could have a resurgence. When did he have his first surgence to be able to make a resurgence?
I was wondering that.
Well, I mean, he did run for 2 touchdowns against the Jets, so there was that. Well, again, he also lost 38-3. So I mean, anything at that point is better than 3 points.
Surgeons. Justin, off to you. Your 4-point pick.
Just to speak to that also, Jurg, I did see a stat. I would have to confirm its authenticity, but since TJ Watt was drafted, in games that he's missed, the Steelers have not won.
Oh, I think that stat is true.
I think it's fair.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So
that sounds about right.
They need him back as soon as possible. I was really hoping Rick would not pick that game because that's really the only game that instills any confidence, I think, when I look along the schedule. All of these teams have disappointed me at one point or another.
That's actually I think we're getting to the point where all of us we can all say at some point or another, this team has disappointed me this season.
Oh yeah.
like I don't know where to go with like the matchups are very strong, and then there's like certain teams where like, all right, well if this player was playing, maybe I would pick them, or like if they were at home, I would pick, but not. It's so convoluted this week that it's a very difficult week, at least
This
in
is a
my mind.
rough week. Yeah, for sure. For
So
sure.
I am gonna pick a team who I think is, according to ESPN, the largest favored team this week.
Dang it.
Yeah. Even though I don't really love the matchup, but they are at home and they are playing a team that just fired their head coach and their abysmal starting quarterback is not playing. I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Rams to beat the Carolina Panthers.
That was going to be my other pick.
I
Justin.
figured.
Yeah,
You know what though? I hate the matchup because if you
too.
look at the team's strengths and the team's weaknesses, the Rams have no offensive line. They are going to get after Matt Stafford, and who knows? Maybe a PJ Walker instills a little bit of chemistry and excitement in that Panthers offense. And they put up some points, and I don't know that the Rams are going to be able to keep up against a strong Panthers defense. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, but I feel like this would have been Jerk's tie.
How did you know?
Yeah, oh yeah. No, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
How did you know? Damn it. Yeah, no, that was definitely my next. Like those two games were the only like definitively confident 4-point games I had. It's a little tough from here, but let's just go with it. My 4-point pick this week. I look at what teams and what divisions have done me right, and this team did me right last week, and this division has done me right before when I've picked them for my 4-point game. So you know what?
Tennessee's on bye. You can't pick them.
I will never pick the Tennessee Titans. I promise you that. I haven't picked them yet, and I ain't picking them. The San Francisco 49ers are going to be my 4-point pick. I know they're a little bit dinged up because Nick Bosa is out, but I'm still confident in what they could do against Atlanta. And the offense, let's just be real here. They're coming off a big game, and they've looked miles better since Jimmy G has become the starter once again. I'm confident in them. Falcons, good team, scrappy team. I respect them, but they traded Deion Jones, which I don't understand why they did that. You losing a piece on that what?
Reset.
Well, that's to say the least. So I'm going with the 49ers there. My 3-point pick, see, it's still a little bit tough because there, like we said, there are not a lot of games that a lot of us are confident in. So I'm going to go with an upset pick here for my 3-pointer. And again, by the way, we're using the ESPN lines as to what our upsets, are technically for context for the people at home. Because like Rick said, we're not really going for point spread here. We're just going outright winner. But for the upset purposes, we are seeing what ESPN's lines are. And there are some intriguing potential upsets that you could go with here, but not a lot that I definitively like. Because the Giants are technically an upset, and it would be a big win against the Ravens. But I can also see Lamar Jackson rushing for 200 yards in this game. Because he's that talented. That's nothing against the Giants defense. That's Lamar Jackson is a freaking MVP candidate. But I'm going to go with, and we talked about this game actually pre-show. One of these teams is literally the Walking Dead. And the other one had a bad game, back-to-back bad games against the Texans and the Eagles. But I think they'll be able to get this one. Give me the Jacksonville Jaguars for my 3-point pick. I think, yes, the Colts defense is relatively talented. I don't see that offense doing anything. The Jaguars also have the confidence of already shutting them out this season. Give me Jacksonville.
I want to know how that's still an upset because Indy's got nobody.
I don't know. I really don't know. I know they won last week, but the fact that the Saints were favored going into the game against the Seahawks, like with what they were looking like going into that game, it's weird.
Indy's got a good defense at home, and Jacksonville struggled last week against people that can cover their receivers. That's why.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still going with the Jags, baby.
All right. So I'm actually pretty torn with this because one of these matchups that I'm looking at, one of the teams in that game has severely disappointed me several times. And then
I think I know what game
the other one is an upset pick. So, I'm going to buy in to our fact or fiction question this morning, earlier in the show. And I'm going to say that the Chargers at home take care of business outright, and they will beat the disappointing Denver Broncos at home. I know that they have not necessarily, clearly both teams have not lived up to their expectations. The Broncos defense is nasty, and I do expect them to get after Justin Herbert, who's still dealing with that rib injury and no longer has Rashawn Slater to protect his blind side. But I don't know, just something about this game screams low scoring, slightly disappointing as it's a Broncos primetime game. But the Chargers are the better football team. They're better coached, and they should pull this one out. So I'll give it to them.
It's also just in the fact that you mentioned, like, yes, still no Rashawn Slater. That's going to be a big deal throughout the season. Randy Gregory's hurt for the Denver Broncos, and last week Austin Eckler had his biggest game of the season with 173 rushing yards. Like
the Broncos also lost someone in their secondary last week for the year, and they lost Garrett Bowles for the year as well with a broken leg.
I think I know. I think it's Darby who they lost in the secondary.
Yes,
although they are getting Justin Simmons back, so maybe that helps them a little bit. But
yeah, Simmons is a great player, but again, that offensive line injury, Garrett Bowles was their best offensive lineman. He did have a few iffy games this year, but he's the most consistent guy they've had there. That's going to be a major issue for Russell Wilson.
I mean, he had the biggest hustle play of the season when he tried to dive at that defensive touchdown that the Raiders had a couple weeks back. Like, say what you will. Now I'm with you. I was very close to making that my 3-point pick, to be honest, but I just have a weird vibe with that game. I'm with you. I'm all for the Broncos slander, but it's that is a tough one. I mean, dear Lord, a lot of these are tough ones. Speaking of which, Rick, back-to-back picks.
Yeah. Okay. So full disclosure, when I kind of did the rankings, all of our 4-point picks were what I thought were 4-point picks. So good on us. At least.
Wait, you knew I would pick the 49ers game?
You thought someone would.
Well, no, yeah. My 4s were Tampa Bay, the Rams, and San Francisco. Like if I had to pick, I would have done that. Because I'm trying to get to the bookie business, obviously. My 3 points tough because I'm looking at 3 potential 3-point games that I have. One of them is New Orleans over Cincinnati and an upset. I'm not sure if Taysom Hill can do it again because the Bengals defense has given up a lot of yards, but I don't know. One of them is Green Bay over the Jets, which is not an upset pick. But Aaron Rodgers is probably going to rebound, although the Jets defense has looked really, really good. So I'm staying away from that one. I'm going to go for my other upset pick here. And something about this game to me screams, if I really want this, I'm going to have to earn it this 10-point week. Mm-hmm. I'm going Kansas City over Buffalo. Yeah. Sorry, Justin.
Haven't seen a reaction like that since Rick in our 3-round mock months back.
Yeah. It's a dangerous game. It's a very, very dangerous game. So, Justin, I know you might have wanted it, but
upset game.
If I lose, be glad because I'll still be further back than you.
Yeah, but it's such a good game to choose as an upset.
Yeah,
Kansas City at home.
You're betting on Mahomes.
It's an upset pick.
Right. I know. That's what I find to be so weird here is that it's an upset pick, I guess, because the Bills' defense, because they just allowed 3 points to Kenny No Name. So, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. So that's what I'm going for my 3. And then I'm kind of doing this a little bit like this was a 2-pointer for me. And the last time I picked against this team was last week, and they won. Like personally, like not all. They won, and it was a game that saw a streak end. So I'm gonna pick against them again because I figure, why not have my wife's team be happy if I don't pick them and they win. So my 2-point pick is Baltimore beating the Giants, with the slight tinge of hope that if the Giants win that game, well, granted I won't be there, so she can't actually, be mad at me if I pick against that. So, I'll be here in Virginia, so I'll just go home to it. I'll go home to the mess. So.
You're gonna get an earful when you get home. That's
I will. That's for damn sure. For damn sure.
Oh man, Justin, your 2-point. I mean, I feel like Rick took some of the games that we were really favoring right there.
I was really hoping to get that game as my 2-point game.
Sorry, bud.
And it sucks because one of the more attractive games here is that Jets-Packers game. But as we saw, when I break my rule, it doesn't work out well for me. So I'm not going to bet against the Jets. I'm not going to bet for the Jets. I'm not going to bet on the Jets at all. And you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do because I got to pick an upset. This is my 2-point pick. Mm-hmm.
This is the segment of the pod where we need music going underneath when we make these
Yeah,
selections.
for real. So I'm not sure, but you know what? I wanted to talk about this a little bit earlier, because we had a discussion with both of these teams and this game this week, and I think you saw one team lose a tough game, and there's another team that keeps every game close, and they're going to have a lot of issues on defense. And that game is the Dolphins Vikings. I know what you're thinking. I'm not the biggest. I know it's his second game. He didn't play that terribly against the Jets. They have very good coverage. Their defense on the Jets secondary has played very well this season. I don't know that the Vikings have the horses to keep up with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki and all of that that power in the run game, because they do have 100 different running backs that can run the ball. So they have a decent offensive line. I know that they did lose, I believe, Armstead last week, so he's not going to be there. But I'm not sure that the Vikings have the defensive capabilities to stop all of that firepower, even with a second game rookie quarterback in Miami. And their offense has been good, but it hasn't been what they needed it to be in critical moments. So I think this will be a closer game. And I think Miami's got those winners on that team to really pull out an upset victory against the Vikings at home. It is in Miami. I'm going to pick Miami here.
Could sweat him out. I mean, I think one thing going towards is the fact that Teddy Bridgewater did get the okay to play again, so he will be the backup. So if you need to make the quick change.
We also need to discuss that Miami defense. I know they gave up 40 points to the Jets last week. They were on the field a lot in bad field position.
Yeah.
All right. If Tua is in that game, I think we might be talking about something different. I'll take the win as a Jets fan. I love it. It was fantastic. It was the best win I've seen in a long time in a divisional game. So I'm not saying the Jets necessarily lose, but it's a lot closer in my mind.
There's one hole that I want to try and shoot into this pick. Do we know the status of Xavier Howard and Byron Jones?
I believe one of them is definitely out and one of them is questionable. I'm not remembering which one.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not great. It's shaky. And I know Justin Jefferson. I expect Justin Jefferson to have 120 yards and a touchdown at least.
See, I thought you were going to round out our trio of love for Geno Smith and pick the Seahawks over the Cardinals as your upset.
I thought about it, but I really couldn't throw my weight behind them same way that I think Miami is going to. Because you know what? The Cardinals are a scrappy team. They are. They're not the best on offense. They're not the best on defense, but they're good. They're well-rounded. I do like the coach, unfortunately, for Jerg. So, yeah, I really was not willing to wager. If I had a choice between a 2-point and a 1-point, that's more of a 1-point pick to me. That's why I didn't go that way.
Jerg, is it your 2-point pick?
Which is also fair in the regards that he mentioned the Seahawks defense has been bad this season. If you're the Cardinals and you need a remedy, it would be against that defense.
Really bad.
Yeah.
It's been rough, especially the last couple. Especially like the fact they gave up nearly 40 points to Dennis Allen. Like that Saints offense does not look good this season. I know it was Taysom Hill that did the work, but you gave him 40 points to Dennis Allen.
In most leagues that I'm in, Kyler Murray is projected to have by far the most fantasy points of anyone else this week.
Not to mention they gave up 45 to the Lions. So, there's
with no weapons, and the Cardinals kind of have no weapons still because it's the last game of DeAndre Hopkins suspension, and they sadly cut Andy Isabella, which waste of a pick. Not say it to Andy Isabella. I think Andy Isabella is a good player.
And where did he go to college?
My memory sucks. You got to remember.
UMass.
There we go.
UMass.
You messed up your pick there. So I'm a glutton for punishment. I think I got some masochistic tendencies in myself because despite the fact that this team has hurt me, I'm going back to them. And this is not the first time that I've been hurt by an individual or an entity, and I'm trying to go back to them. It's not the first time. Not going to share that story, but it's not the first time. I'm gonna go with the Green Bay Packers over the Jets. I think the big thing from like Justin mentioned it, Raheem Mostert got over 100 yards. If Matt LaFleur actually calls the game, and if Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are doing their thing, I don't see a reason why the Packers can't win this game. Like, I'm not saying it's a blowout. I think 7.5 is generous. I think they only win maybe by a field goal or 6 points. But I'm going to pick the Packers to win this one. So that's the territory I'm at. I'm picking the Packers over the Jets begrudgingly. That's never thought I'd get into that territory anytime soon.
Terrible.
And now
Who's your upset?
Wow.
He has Jacksonville. That's his they're
Jacksonville was upset. Was an upset pick. Okay.
Yeah, they're Indy's -1.5.
Okay.
Calm down there, Justin.
I was curious. I didn't remember.
He was like, "You didn't pick it up." And my 1 point pick. God, you guys have mentioned it. There are not a lot of
The
good
cupboard is bare, Jurg.
Yeah, it is. It is rough. It is rough. I'm really not trying to extend the show. I literally don't know who the hell to pick for my 1-pointer. Jesus God, there's so many terrible games left.
A lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
And see, the problem is that one of these games I have to be confident in either the Cowboys or the Eagles. And the fact is, I like both teams. I just don't like the fact they're facing each other.
Right.
So wait, let's go over the games then while you think. We have the Patriots at the Browns.
Right.
Browns are a 2.5-point favorite.
Yep.
We have the Bengals at the Saints.
Yep.
Cincy is a 2.5-point road favorite.
Mm-hmm.
You picked the Giant game, right?
Yes, Seattle, Arizona is on
Seattle,
there.
Arizona in Seattle, which Arizona is a 2.5-point favorite, and Cowboys, Eagles in Philly, which Philly is a 6.5-point favorite, which is a big spread.
That's surprising to me.
It is
that is a very surprising spread.
They're still not buying into Cooper on that good cush rush, if you ask me.
Well, I don't know if it's that or if it's that Jalen Hurts has just led such a good offense again, but they're not respecting the Cowboys D as well.
Right.
That's what I was concerned
You like that
about.
nickname, Justin?
Yeah.
It's good.
Thank you.
Shout out to Colorado.
Shut up. Well, no. So the funny thing is like one of my friends and co-hosts on another podcast, he accidentally called Cooper Rush Cooper Cush one time, and that has been the spawn of that joke.
But still, shout out to Colorado.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Never been there, but I would like to one day. I would love to see an Avalanche game. As fans go wild.
They do. They're insane.
All right. If I'm going to pick a game, because I actually want to pick a game here.
Do you though?
I don't actually. Can I just get the free point? Can we just all take the free point?
No.
Damn it. Okay. I will go with barely the Cleveland Browns because the Patriots are getting lucky with their wins. Like, they have 2 BS wins. It's the Lions who shouldn't have been shut out, and it's the Steelers who, if they had a lick of offense in that game, they would have won. The Patriots could very easily be 0-5. I'm going to go with the Browns here because I think it's still Bailey Zappi, if I'm not mistaken.
Mac Jones is there, but still Bailey Zappi, yeah.
Still
Not doubtful, but questionable. So he's
Right.
still upgraded, but they're still not 100% he's playing.
Right.
Even if Jones plays 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions this season, I'm not scared of McCorkle or the Zap Man himself. Give me the Browns.
Okay. Justin, to you.
Okay, so
Rough.
yeah, it's a tough one. Again, I'm not super confident in that Cardinals Seahawks game. Cardinals Eagles was last week.
Right.
So, I think I'm gonna have to throw my weight behind my preseason predictions, and I'm gonna have to take the best team available, and that's gonna be the Eagles at home. I am not the most confident in this game, which is obviously why it's a 1-point game. I do have a lot of faith in a very strong Cowboys offense. They're good at forcing turnovers, but they're going to have a lot to cover in Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. And Jalen Hurts has proven that he is excellent at creating time for these receivers to get open. And you have to play that pass because they will throw that ball right over the top of you. And when you're not a good run defense, which the Cowboys are, they're a very good run defense this year. The Eagles can beat you in so many ways, not just running the ball, even though they are one of the top rushing teams in the league this year, especially when it comes to rushing touchdowns. So I'm going to go with the Eagles. I just think that it'll be a close game. I do not see them winning by 6.5, but I could see them pulling this one out. I think they're the better team overall, especially if Dak is not playing.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, my bad, Rick. But I think the thing is that when you look at both sides there, I think the Eagles are facing the strongest defense that they've seen this season in the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are arguably facing the most talented skill position group that they faced yet with the Eagles. So it's very interesting to see which team's strength is going to have a little crack in this game that could potentially make the difference. I think.
Well, if you look at the only other argument that I could possibly give for the Cowboys, although I guess they did play the Bengals too, which is a very talented one, but the Bucks when they were 100% healthy,
True.
and I mean they didn't score any touchdowns, but they threw the ball all over them. They had a ton of yards. Julio Jones was catching deep balls. Mike Evans had a good game. Chris Godwin, I believe, was out, but they had Rashad Perriman catching the ball. They had Scotty Miller doing well. So, yeah, I don't think that the boys are going to have enough in the secondary and then have the ability to stop that run game.
Fair. Rick, your 1 point game.
Jerry, can we invest in some like lighting for you? You know, some backlighting of some kind, some studio lighting, because you look like you're like the.
I mean, I don't want to step away. I could get my lamp on real quick.
You look like you're the villain from Unfriended that's coming in through the screen to kill everybody at this point.
I mean, I could turn the camera off and get some light here.
Yeah, you know, the podcast is almost over, but it's tips for next week. Let's go with that. How about that?
Fair
lighting. Okay. Mainly because I'm going to leave Sandoval with Geno Smith. I'm going to take, and also because I feel better about this being a 1 point pick than a 3 point pick, I'm going to ride with New Orleans over Cincinnati as my 1 point game. I feel a lot better about it being a 1 pointer than a 3 pointer because there's not a lot of risk for me in it. And I think if Taysom Hill can have a big enough game, because Cincinnati's defense has kind of they've been good, but they've been shaky at times. And I don't know how Trey Hendrickson and that crew is going to do against Swiss Army Knife like Taysom Hill. So I will make that my 1 pointer. And then, as I mentioned, Sandoval has only one game this week. So how do you want to play this one?
So, ladies and gentlemen, as we've kind of alluded to, and it's finally time because bye weeks are finally into effect here, Sandoval is going to have less games going forward, and because of that, obviously, less potential, picks and points. But here's the thing: starting him off right now with 1 point, we're going to increase it by how much? Well, there's no way to do it properly because let's be real here. I love him, but we know Justin hates Sandoval with the passion of 1,000 burning suns, which is kind of the equivalent to my hate of the Tennessee Titans.
I'll light him on fire right now.
So.
There we go.
The way we're doing this, ladies and gentlemen, is we are bringing back the greatest invention on the show, which is the Wheel of Chaos. The wheel decides all. Of course, you see point multipliers right there from 3 on up. You got 3 points, you got 4 points, you got 5 points, 6, 7, 8. And also you have 10 plus 1, which is the equivalent to what Rick has alluded to, which is a perfect week. Because if we get a perfect week on this show, guys, we get a +1 to our score.
Wouldn't it just be times 11?
Sure, but it's more
fun
to do
it. Do you have to ruin it?
Hey, 10x plus 1. It's more fun to do it that way. It's more algebraic.
Justin,
yes.
Can you not kill the vibe?
I hate math.
I don't. Well, he's got more of a chance to have more than 5 points this week.
We also have 1 and 2, by the way.
Yes.
So
well, it's the wheel. So who knows what the wheel's going to spin to?
You should have made the 10 plus 1 really small.
Shush. I don't have control over that. I don't know what you want me to do here, Chief.
No control over the wheel.
This wheel runs itself.
It does.
So 1 spin, guys. 1 spin. If you want to take a guess real quick, by the luck of the universe, what do you think Sandoval's going to get, Rick?
I'm going to say 9.
Yeah, probably he'll find a way to get 12. I don't know.
I'll go in the middle. I'll say he'll get a 5-time multiplier. So let's see.
Well, I've eagerly awaited this. I really have.
Oh, so have I.
Let's see here. Damn.
It'll stop at some point, I promise.
Eventually.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Come on. Get there.
Yup, you got it.
Oh, man, I freaking love this show. Oh, my God.
That damn deer.
Oh, no. Oh, I freaking love this show. Oh, my God, that's so great. That's so great. Oh, it's beautiful.
No.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, my God. So sad. That deer, bro. So Sandoval has a chance at a perfect week. Rick, What's his pick again? You said he's picking the Seahawks.
He's picking Geno Smith and the Seahawks over the Cardinals.
Oh my God, my head hurts.
For 11 points.
For 11 points, he's riding with Geno Smith.
Which, if all things are being equal here, if I have a 0-point week, he only leapfrogs me. So Justin, you'd still be ahead of the deer.
All right.
I think. What if we all had 0 this week? Hypothetically, what would he be?
He would still be third. He would still only leapfrog me because he would have 22 points at the end of this week.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Copy. Just want to check. All right. Well, the deer gets his way.
Oh, mercy. Okay.
Oh, and we're still not done, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, because we have our segment finale, show finale, per usual.
Oh, that's the old title. Where the hell's the new title coming?
Excuse me.
Well, thank you. Rant on you next week, Jordan. God damn it. Oh man. Before I do that, just for the standings, for everyone keeping track at home, Jerg 4 points San Francisco, 3 points Jacksonville, 2 points Green Bay, 1 point Cleveland. Justin 4 points to the Rams, 3 points to the Chargers. So you're going very LA this week. 2 points to Miami, 1 point to Philly. I am 4 points Tampa, 3 points Kansas City, 2 to Baltimore, and 1 to New Orleans. Sandoval is 1 point Seattle with the point multiplier of 11 if he wins. Now, I have a runner-up honorable mention for my rant of the week because I just heard about this today. And, we're coming up to – it's October 15th, boys. My birthday is tomorrow, so happy birthday to me. It's the greatest national holiday of all time, by the way, 31 years old. But we're coming to that most time-honored tradition of holidays, Thanksgiving, when, your family gathers around the table and talks to, other, family members that you haven't seen in a while. And there's some awkward conversations bound to be about. Well, there'll be an awkward time at the Runyon household this year. Let me tell you that much, because John Runyon Jr., who is a guard for the Packers, received a letter that he was fined about $5,200 for leg whipping an opponent during the first quarter of Green Bay's loss last Sunday to the Giants in London. Unfortunately for him, his father, John Runyon Sr., is the NFL VP of football operations who had to write out the fine letter to John Runyon Jr. saying that you were fined $5,200 for the leg whip. And he didn't sign it, sincerely, Father, Dad, your God among men. He signed it John Runyon Sr. So that'll be a fun type of conversation with the Runyon household for Thanksgiving. I'm kind of glad I'm not there. It's not really a rant per se, just a funny little anecdote, if you will. Let's go into the rants. Number 3, this is our first Rostrum Podium retread, which means that I take a topic I've already spoken about that's happened once again, activists and artwork. Again, the Just Stop Oil people are doing this all over again. They superglued themselves to the frames of paintings a few weeks ago. They threw cake at the Mona Lisa. And now they've thrown tomato soup at Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers in a protest of climate change and Just Stop Oil and all of that. What did art ever do to you guys? Seriously, what did artwork ever do to you? I mean, I'm not really a big fan of artwork myself, but I appreciate, a good painting now and again. And Van Gogh's works is, they're solid. What did artwork ever do to you that you have to throw, of all soups, tomato soup? I could have sworn I saw an alphabet in there too as well at some point. It was like the letter J was in there for some reason. Can we not do this, please? The painting is fine. The frame's a little damaged, but the painting was covered, not with glass, with a film that you can peel off and it's okay. Can we just not? And also, museum security. Why are you letting people in and not checking their bags for soup or products that can be thrown on the paintings here? Let's talk about that, shall we? Museum security very lax in, where is this? Europe, not Belgium, but Britain. Close enough, same thing. Regardless, number 2, my flight to Norfolk today was actually a very nice flight. Very simple flight. However, booking the flight to Norfolk was a bit of a not a nightmare, but a bit of an exercise in confusion. So I booked it on JetBlue. However, it was operated by American that was running a Republic Airways jet that was under the guise of American Eagle Airlines. At some point, that plane is under a crisis of identity at this point. Doesn't know who it is. Doesn't know it's a plane anymore at this point. What? I understand. We're trying to consolidate and merge everything, but that's just ridiculous. If it's an American Eagle flight, let me book it on AmericanEagle.com, which will go to the clothing store instead of the airline store. It's why is it 25 steps to book a plane that only took me 55 minutes to get from New York to Norfolk, Virginia. Like, what? Why are we doing that?
Was it a
Why are
Spirit engine? Did it have a Spirit engine too? Like,
I think it was an Avianca engine actually, and I think the pilot said "Welcome to Southwest Airlines," and then there was like an Azerbaijani air napkin that I had in my complimentary snack. You know, it was all over the place. It was like the airline of the world, which I get it, but like, you know, let's try and like simplify it a little bit. And number one, back to sports, baseball coaches and analytics. Now, in the past, baseball has been a very simple game. When the starter can't finish the game, the bullpen comes in and finishes the game for the starter. This has been a known fact. Starters go 6 innings or 7 innings. Bullpen gets the last 2. In a close game, that's why you have long relievers, guys who were starters that can go 3 innings or 4 innings in a pinch. Emergency starters can go 4 innings in a pinch. Let's talk about this. The analytics say Robbie Ray, who's a left-handed pitcher, can pitch to Yordan Alvarez, a left-handed hitter, with no warm-up, coming in as a reliever, as a starter, 2 pitches in, walk-off home run. Let's talk about the Yankees. Jameson Taillon, who's not in your starting rotation, although he started the entire season last year because the analytics say he's a better reliever and we need a 3-person rotation, comes in the 10th inning of a 2-2 game, immediately leaves them 2 runs. Yankees lose 4-2. Stop with the analytics. It is annoying. Baseball is not chess. Baseball is not a Rube Goldberg machine. Baseball is baseball. You have relievers who are in the bullpen who can do this, who do this for a living. Bring in your relievers. And I get it. Oh, God, we'll tax our bullpen. Nah. Well, how many of your pitchers go more than 5+ innings? You know, back in the day, they'd go 9 innings, come back the next day, and pitch another 9 innings. Look at Johnny Vandermeer. He threw 2 consecutive no-hitters. 9 innings one game, 5 days later, 9 innings the next. Didn't need the bullpen either there, too. No stupid analytics, no engines churning, no departments that were there. It was just baseball. We don't need analytics telling us who can pitch where and why and how. It is ruining the game. It is taxing my patience as a baseball fan because now I have to worry about all these stats. And by the way, launch angle and exit velocity are the stupidest stats I've ever heard of my entire life. Oh, yeah, it was 150 miles an hour off the bat. He grounded out to third base, you noob. Like, stupid. Come on. Why do we care about all of this? Because it's fun. It's hip. Well, you know what's hip? An actual hip. There you go. Take that to the bank with you. Duncan, you still suck. Even in Virginia, I still say you suck. And Adam Rank, just fight me. My team beat your team. What now, Ranky? And I love the Welsh.
I'm waiting for the day, Justin, where we can finally actually speak a little bit after Rick's rant, but it's never going to happen. You just lose the speechless every time.
There's nothing to say.
Yeah,
Rick says it all.
Yeah, exactly. Rick says it all. Rick, he absolutely says it all. So with that being said, I think there's no other way to end the show. So ladies and gentlemen, that was this week's episode. Jesus, I've been stunned by that rant. That was this week's episode of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Clearly, leaving everyone breathless as it did to me right there temporarily. But yeah, you got our picks, you got our thoughts, you got everything. Let's see what happens. And of course, you had the highlight of the show. There is no better form of entertainment than the fact that that damn deer, could potentially get 11 points. Like, does anything else need to be said? I think that's the perfect way to summarize this episode. As Justin looks like he doesn't want to be here anymore. Well, Justin, it's the end of the episode.
Not that I don't want to be here.
Well,
he doesn't want the damn deer to be here.
Very true, very true. The problem is that deer is never leaving anytime soon. Both a positive and a negative for us as a whole. Check back in a week from now how happy we'll be when a deer beats us in predictions. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was this week's episode. We're back next week, of course, for more game selections, more probably terrible calls by coaches, officials, and all the like. And probably there's going to be at least one boneheaded interception thrown by somebody that we could actually have a little bit of fun with. Because on Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, it's all about fun, the football, and us spreading just a little bit of chaos. Thanks so much for joining us this weekend, and we'll see you guys next time.